Hi, Warren. How are you?
Hey, come on. I'm doing great. Glad to be here with you today.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So we do have a couple of questions for you today. So let's get started, I guess. Maybe first off, for those who don't know you, can you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your background?
Sure. My name's Warren Woodward. I'm the co-founder and chief growth officer at a company called Upptic. I've been in the mobile performance marketing space since about 2014, initially working at different mobile game publishers, such as Blastworks, Wargaming, and Nexon, and then started my own company here with Upptic about 2019. Here at Upptic, we do full scope growth marketing. So that means user acquisition, creative, and all of the mobile analytics and kind of forecasting work related to that. And we really specialize in games, kind of working across games genres.
Cool. So yeah, that's clear. You've led growth and UA for massive mobile game portfolios, and now you run a growth-focused agency. So I guess my question is, what's your philosophy on where incrementality testing fits into performance marketing today? And maybe what are the mistakes you see still some brands and advertisers making when it comes to incrementality?
So think about incrementality. I think there's the micro of incrementality as far as like the different models you're using, but there's also sort of the macro. And so I think maybe focusing on the macro, usually when I start working with a new partner, which is not, I think we know intrinsically that not all advertising channels are the same as far as your interaction with them and how it might compel you to install a product, use a product, install a game. So when coming into work with a new partner or someone who's fresh to UA, usually maybe they've heard different things about different channels, or even they have some data and the data tells them one thing. ROAS of channel A is 120%, ROAS of channel B is 80%, therefore A is better than B. So a lot of times broaching this topic of incrementality is really digging in and talking about, okay, well, what is this ad unit? What is this other ad unit? Okay, this is your branded keyword search on Apple Search. Do you think that is adding the same, like if you turn that off, do you think you would still get some of those people today? And how is that maybe different from an ad on YouTube where there's no exposure to that same audience? So usually when approaching incrementality, which is a very complex topic, I like to start by framing in, picture ad unit A versus ad unit B. For an end user, do you think they're driving the same value as far as their impact? Even if you might see the same thing attributed to both, this is why we might want to think about them a little differently and maybe set our success targets a little differently for each of these.
Okay. So you definitely use that to then maybe set different targets, right? The results of incrementality to balance them. Okay. With your experience running paid growth for titles like big ones, especially like BitLife or Disney Mirrorverse, like how would you define the perfect segments or the perfect audience for high confidence lift testing? And typically, what kind of traits do you look for when you set one up?
Sure. So if you're trying to identify an audience for lift testing, my advice is usually to make that segment as neutral as possible. Meaning, you just want a clean control and test group. You also want to avoid doing like self-selecting groups, like making a segment of your top payers or anything like this. So usually that's what I would recommend, making as neutral a segment as possible and having that for both your holdout and your test group.
Super clear. Obviously, we're all looking for positive results in incrementality testing. But my question here is, can you recall a time when a negative list test fundamentally changed your strategy? And how did you or your team react? And maybe what was the long-term impact that you got from that learning?
There's certain channels. So, working with different partners, a lot of times they might have their own preferences in how they do incrementality testing or validate this. But we see it all the time where we come in and either our team will help assist or our partner might already have in progress some kind of incrementality test. There's a couple of repeat offender channels that we often see when people do these tests. The patterns are the same. So sometimes you can even predict once you've been through a few of these. Very often, once this process is complete, there are certain channels where the budget is going to be very aggressive. Two things. The budget will be more aggressively moved away from a channel, and or the ROAS target for profitability of that channel will be moved up, increased if it's found that there's a negative lift.
A lot of marketers actually struggle with explaining incrementality to non-marketing stakeholders. So how would you frame it for a CFO who wants deterministic answers and ROI clarity?
Yeah, so thinking about how to explain incrementality to a non-marketing discipline such as a CFO, a lot of times I like to just be very practical about it. A lot of times if we have detected through some sort of testing process that we think a channel might be poaching organic installs, negative lift. Usually what I like to do, often you can find a pretty clear reason for that. And so a very simple thing to do is just literally like display what the ad units are. So if it's something such as video ads that are auto loading the app store, so kind of forcing a click where there's no human intent click, or there's maybe website targeting where it's a bunch of ads on the same page and kind of intrusive ads, just showing the other stakeholders and be like, look, yes, we're removing the budget or we're changing the target for this. I know you liked the numbers before, but this is the actual experience of the ad. If you saw this ad, or if one of our customers saw the ad, do you think this is actually driving clear intent? And I find removing it away from kind of the more abstract data on a spreadsheet to what is the actual end user experience of the ad is often a good way to start the conversation about either positive or negative incrementality with a non-UA stakeholder.
Okay. So yeah, clear real life example of what the user is experiencing in the end. And it's
Yes.
probably, yeah. Cool. How do you keep incrementality testing efficient without sacrificing rigor, especially when you're balancing multiple clients, creative channels at the same time?
Yeah, that's a great question. How do you keep incrementality efficient without sacrificing rigor? I'll be honest, that's not usually the case these days, meaning we are a partner. So when we come in to help someone with UA, the most common case is they've heard about incrementality. They know they should be doing it, but they don't have a clear playbook, nor have they been provided a clear playbook for someone else. So usually there's someone within the company that's been tasked with like, hey, go figure out incrementality for us for the first time. And I would say like we are still as an industry kind of lacking widely adopted, normalized, easy to understand methodologies. So it is still rather chaotic. And the most common case I see is it's a team figuring it out for the first time. And their process is a little bit different from the last 5 teams that I've also worked with that are figuring it out for the first time. So it's not something as mature as like, deterministic attribution where it's like there's clear playbooks and rule sets. So it's still quite a chaotic field. I think there are obviously more providers in the space, more conversations about it. But I would say most teams have a little imposter syndrome or a little like feeling like they're late to the party. Meanwhile, most other teams are still just figuring it out for themselves also.
Let's talk maybe a bit about the future now. Looking ahead, what role do you see incrementality playing in the future of UA and performance marketing in general?
Yeah, it seems clear that incrementality is going to be playing a much larger and more consistent role in the future of user acquisition kind of across devices and across genres. And we saw the hints of this with the implementation of SKAd Network on iOS years back, where all of a sudden teams were like, oh crap, I guess I need to figure out a little different way to measure this without perfect data. And that kind of tested the muscle, I think, for teams. These days, it's more and more that when we're doing user acquisition on product, it's not just your traditional mobile channels. There's retargeting involved. There's CTV involved. And the mission of mobile performance marketing is no longer like one type of channel and one set of rules. So I see teams more and more having to have a layer of additional thoughtfulness around incrementality. It's not perfect, but I'd say the default now is that teams are thinking about this and doing something rather than doing nothing. I would say some years back, it was more like, if I need to use incrementality to work with a channel, I'm just not going to work with that channel. I don't want to think that hard. I don't want to develop new processes. I just want the things that I can cleanly measure in my MMP. So I would say it's clear that like it's already here and it's now more of a default in especially large teams playbooks.
Sure. Warren, thanks so much for your time today and for your insights. I'm sure so people want to reach out. So where can they find your work? And is there anything you want to talk to us about today?
Sure. If anyone checking this out would like to learn more about Upptic, about our agency service or our growth automation and forecasting software, you can reach us through our website. It's upptic.com, upptic.com. Thanks a lot for having me.
Thank you. Thanks, Warren.